Right, good afternoon everyone and thank you for joining us. We are going to be doing the next in our series of Quick Bites webinars. So this is a 15-minute webinar and we're going to be looking at creating a conversation in JIT Animate. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Nikki Kimball. I'm one of the educational consultants here at Just Too Easy. Now in terms of what we're going to cover in today's session, as I said, it's a 15-minute tutorial. We're going to look at creating a basic animation and using speech bubbles to create a conversation. I'm going to show you how to save your animation and also how to export it as a GIF once it's finished. I will be giving a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to either type them into the chat box or you can save it until the end of the presentation. Right. If I was to be teaching animation in a classroom again, it was one of my favourite things to teach, I would encourage you to plan out your animation first, and this is especially important if you're going to be creating animations with texts or storylines alongside them. So what I have ready for you to use, should you want to use this as part of your lessons, is a storyboard plan. Now this is available through the library, so if you haven't seen our library, this is the logo. It's at the top of your launch pad, which is just here. And if you search for the keyword storyboard, it will bring up this template here. Now this is created in J2E5. It is ready to use with your students. All you need to do for your students to access it is to share, and then you select which class or which student you wish to share it with. They can then open that and they can type straight onto this. They can type in the text that they want to use. They could even create some pictures in JIT Paint and save those as images and import those onto the storyboard. So there you go, there's a little tip. I would definitely recommend that if you're going to be creating some animations. Once you and your students have planned your animation, you're going to start generating it. So this is the animation that we're going to have a go at creating, or that I'm going to showcase how to create. We're going to be looking at adding characters, adding speech bubbles, saving the work as a working file, should you wish to edit it further, and then exporting finished animations. So this has been exported as a GIF. Unfortunately, it's exported a little bit pixelated, so they are working on fixing that for me in the tech team, luckily. But to give you an idea of what it looks like in JIT Animate before we create it, this is the animation. So we can press play. We've got our two characters moving, so it's stop frame animation. We've got our speech bubbles with text inside, and then we've got our sort of little storyline where they walk off. So it's a very quick animation. You can make much longer animations if you wish to. You also have things like we can speed up the animations that we create. So I'm going to create that. So when creating your animation, you're going to open up JIT, which is here. It stands for the Just Too Easy Infant Toolkit. And we're going to select the animate tool, which is this lovely pink tool up here. It's a little bit of a side tip. If you're using any of these tools, they do open up, the surrounding page opens up and correlates with the tab that you're on. So you can spot straight away which students have gone off on a bit of a tangent and using a different tool altogether. There's always one. Right, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to choose our background. There are lots of backgrounds to choose from in Animate. You can use the clip art ones. Another little tip, you do also have pictures, so you can import pictures from your My Files. And you've also got your web search, so you could, for example, look for a forest if you wanted to set your animation in a forest. So that's a great way of extending that suitability from Key Stage 1 right up to Upper Key Stage 2, so you can make it a bit more relevant and a bit more older for your older students. So we're going to choose a background. I'm going to stick with current affairs, and we're going to go with our coronation just because we've got such brilliant backgrounds. If you're choosing a clip art background, it will link a library to it. So this obviously is a coronation background, so it's chosen my coronation library. I can select a different library if I wanted to by clicking on coronation, but I'm going to stick within my coronation clip art library. I've got someone just waiting to come in, so let's just admit someone. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to select one character at a time. There we go. So we're going to select a character for our animation. Now again, a little tip just to cut down on the amount of time this is going to take you. You can choose your character. I would recommend that you don't resize it, because what we're going to do is we're going to lay one of our characters, make them move first, and then we're going to make the other character move, and then we're going to add in our speech bubbles. So when you start resizing it, it means when you select each character and you have to reselect them, you then have to resize it. So I wouldn't play around with the sizing too much. Now the first bit of the animation, we're just going to make our character move initially, and we're just going to focus on the one character. So I'm going to get my character. I personally am a bit of a perfectionist. I like them to come in from the side of the screen, but you can start them wherever you want on that screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click where I want to lay my character, and then I'm going to go down to my frames reel at the bottom. Now the principle behind animation is you want the movements to be as small as possible. So we're going to print them on each frame, and the frames are going to run together in very quick succession to give that illusion of movement. So we've already got 5 frames at the bottom. So I've laid my character on my first frame. I'm going to click on my next frame, and you'll see I've got this ghost character. Oh, and I've printed that by mistake, so I'm going to use my undo button. I'm going to zoom in if I can. I've just got people coming in, so let's just admit. And you can see where my character was in the last frame. So that is called onion skinning. It is a technical term that's used in animation, and it just shows you where your character was in the previous frame. So what we can do is we can place our character slightly to the side, and then we're going to do that process again. So we're going to click on our next frame, lay our character to the side, next frame, character, next frame, character. Now, once you get to the end of your frames reel, you can add more frames by clicking on this green plus. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to place our character and then press the green plus. Place our character and the green plus. And then I'm going to stop there. So there, I've got my one character moving now. Now I want my other character, because obviously we want we want 2 characters to have a conversation. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to choose my next character. Now I'm already in my coronation library, so I could open up my coronation library and find a character. Alternatively, what I can do is I can scroll through the characters that I've got within that library. So you can use the arrows instead of having to go back into your library. I haven't done this very well. Let's choose, we've got a lovely beefeater. And we're going to do the same thing with our character, except this time we're going to have our character coming in from the other side. So I'm going to place my character by pressing my left click, and I'm going to go to the next frame, and you'll see that onion skinning is there, so that's ghost character, and I can lay my character next to that ghost character. And I'm going to follow the same process that we did before. I'm going to go through each frame and just place my character in a slightly different place. And I'm going to do that for all the frames that I have created so far. And I'm just going to scroll along. And there we go. Now, this is very much like programming. What I would suggest is you have a go at creating animation and then playing it back, just to make sure that we haven't made any mistakes. So we're going to do that by clicking on our play button and see what our animation looks like so far. So brilliant, we've got our 2 characters moving into the centre. So now what we want is for our characters to have a conversation. So for this, we're going to use our speech bubbles. So we have a speech bubble library here, ready to use. Now what I would recommend is when you're using speech bubbles, we're going to make our frame freeze. And we're going to do that on the last frame. We're going to press this red plus button. So that will copy that whole frame. So there'll be no movement. Then what we can do, once we press that red plus, we're going to add in a speech bubble. So we're going to click our speech bubbles library. And another little pro tip, I would make this speech bubble as big as you want it to be before you add the text in. If you add the text in, then make it bigger. It can pixelate that speech bubble, which can get a bit, it doesn't look great. There are different speech bubbles that we can choose from. I quite like this one because it's quite sort of big. We can check how big that is. That looks quite nice. You can also rotate it or flip it around. So we could have one side and one the other. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add in our text. So this is a great way of tying in your English and your literacy skills. Your kids could research some facts, for example, and we are going to use a fact in this instance. So we're going to say King Charles III, that's the second, will be coronated on 6th of May 2020, and obviously I will make that a capital letter, and there you can see that has typed that into that speech bubble. And then when I'm happy with how it looks, I'm happy with the content, all I'm going to do is exactly the same. I'm going to stamp that onto my frame, and there we go. Now, because you could, of course, copy that frame and add it all in, but this freeze frame, this red plus, just means that all the characters and that speech bubble will stay still. And I would recommend for at least 4 frames really, because that gives the audience time to read that speech bubble. So we're going to just press that red plus. There we go. And then I'm going to play that back and just double check that that looks okay. And there we go, we've got the first half of our conversation. So then, to carry on our conversation, we're going to press the green plus. That's going to give us a fresh frame with our characters, so we know where our characters are. We don't need to worry about our speech bubble anymore, but we need to add in our characters again. And this is what I was saying at the beginning. This is why it's sometimes easier if you don't resize your characters, because you see I've added a bigger speech bubble there, so I can reset my character, and that is going to be the same size, so you don't have to worry about sort of matching the size. And then we're going to do that same process again. We're going to make our one character move. So we're going to add our character, we're going to use our green plus again, and we're going to make him move a little bit further into the centre. And we're just going to keep making him move, not too far. There we go. And then we're going to go back to that first frame where we've added in our character, and we're going to create our other character. So we're going to add him in, our beefeater. I can't remember which one I used. It was that one, okay? And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make her move. I think it's a her. And we're going to add that onto every frame again. And scroll across. And there we go. Now we want to add in our second speech bubble. So they are having a conversation. So we want our beefeater to talk this time. So we're going to do the same process. We're going to use our red plus. So that will hold that freeze frame. Then we're going to open up our speech bubbles again. We're going to find an appropriate speech bubble. There we go. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to add in my second bit of text. So we're going to say the streets of London will be full. And I'm going to spell that correctly. There we go. Obviously, you can make that text whatever you want. I'm going to flip that around so that it faces the other way. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stamp that onto that frame, and then we're going to use our freeze frame, which is the red plus. And we're going to use that for at least 3 or 4 frames, and then we can play our animation again. There we go. We've got the one side of the conversation and the second side of the conversation. Right, I've got a minute to go. So that is how you would create your animation. Now, animations generally for this process, it's not a one lesson kind of thing. This would be a couple of lessons at least, especially if you're building in that planning and using that storyboard template, which is available in the library. So you do have the option here to save. So this save button will save into your or whoever was creating it, so your pupils' My Files. So that means you can go back into your My Files. Here we go. So as a user, there is my animation. So I can click on that and I can carry on editing, carry on creating if I wanted to. Now, once you or your students are completely finished with your animation, you do have the option to export as GIF. So this is a small little animation file, which is here. So you can see just top right, there's save as GIF. So if I click that, and I'm going to show you the difference between the two, you would only ever press that once the animation was finished. So if I just go back to my my files, so this is the animate GIF. So this is what it looks like when it's exported as a GIF. So you can see we can't do any editing and it just gives you that nice little video format. Now, if you were tying this into current affairs, for example, or maybe you were doing it around history or geography, we've got a fantastic animation all about the water cycle, so science. Once you have exported it as a GIF, if you wanted to link that as evidence, you can, of course, click on the green eye and you've got the option to QR code to that piece of work. So that is a great way of still having work for books, should you need that for sort of book trawls or such like. What I would recommend is you just tick that box that says publish. Now, that won't publish that anywhere. It just means that that QR code is now scannable by anyone with a device. So you can print that out. For example, we could put this in our literacy book because we've researched facts and written it. You could print that out, and that is then a live animation that would link into what they were studying. Okay, so that is the difference between saving and exporting. Now, this is just a lovely in-school example of use that we had posted on Twitter. I just wanted to showcase it. I know I'm a minute and a half over my time, but this is a great consultant called James Fraser, who's Eat, Sleep, ICT, Repeat. And this year 2 student created this. And it's just a little magic trick. So they've created the characters that change. And they did it all by themselves. And I think he did say that it's a knock-knock joke, but actually I think that child did 2 animations. So there we go. So that's just a really nice use of animation. So that is the end of today's session. This is one of the Quick Bites webinar series. Now, these are all available, all recorded and available at justtooeasy.com/news. There is a tab off your Launchpad. If you go to the Just Too Easy tile there is a tab called Webinars. And we have a whole library of Quick Bites webinars. This will be added by the end of the week. They're all 15 minutes long, all about various aspects of the site. So please have a look at those. And that is the end of today's session. Unless anybody has any questions, I'm more than welcome to answer anything that you might have. Feel free to unmute and put me on the spot.
No question, just want to say thank you. That was very informative.
Thank you. Thank you for being brave and unmuting. Right, well, I assume there's no questions, so thank you so much for giving up your Tuesday afternoon. We are running 2 more this term. I think we've got Mix next, and I think Branching Database in July. So please join us for those. They are available through Eventbrite, and we are advertising it through Facebook and Twitter, so keep an eye out for those. But thank you very much and enjoy your Tuesday evening.